Hello. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Popcorn for Breakfast with the incomparable co-host, Kirk.
Not gonna lie, I thought you were gonna say the incompetent co-host.
The incompetent. He is so stupid. No, of course not, Kirk. Welcome.
There was like a pause on in. There may not have been. Maybe it's just my self headspace right
it's
now.
Your imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head.
I thought you were gonna say just like roast me. The incompetent.
Not this time. I got to build you up first and then tear you down. You know how that goes.
Oh yes. By the end of this episode, I'll be a puddle of tears.
But with Kirk.
Hello.
I am your other co-host, Cam. Thank you so much for being here. If you are with us for the very first time, a special thank you to you for tuning in. Here's how this works. If you're new to the show, this is a show called Popcorn for Breakfast. And if you're watching on the stream, meaning you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch right now, welcome. And we have a whole long show for you that'll include movie news, TV news, movie reviews, this time movie reviews, plural. I added the S because we're reviewing 2 films this week. And if it's your first time listening to the show and you're listening in the podcast form on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever, we're going to chop this up into 3 episodes, 1 for movie news and then 1 for each of our reviews. And then you will get it dispersed throughout the week. So that's how we do it here. We're so glad to have you guys as always. We are very much in the thick of it right now with, it's like the Backyardigans song, the Into the Thick of It.
Oh yes.
That was on TikTok forever.
Have a TikTok, yeah.
Man, it's amazing how TikTok can just ruin songs faster than anywhere. It's insane. Like faster than a radio station. We used to always complain like back in the day that radio stations were like killing certain songs because they would play them over and over and over again. I feel very much that way about TikTok now. Because that song that was Justin Bieber and Kid Laroi, you know which one I'm talking about? Their big song.
What's that song?
I can't remember what it's called anymore.
While you think of the song you hate, I very vividly remember Hey There Delilah being
on TikTok or on the radio?
The radio.
Oh,
the
yeah.
And right now, we're on the cusp of hating another song. What's the song they're playing for Couch Boy? Shout out to Couch Boy.
Oh, yeah. What song are they playing? So Stay is the song by Justin Bieber and Kid Laroi that I can't stand anymore. I really liked it at first, and now I'm just like, it's that.
Yes.
That's how that goes. I know none of the words. The Couch Boy song, though. Hold on. I'm on the internet. This is bad radio. This is bad radio.
Important. If you have not heard of the sensation that Couch Boy is, girl comes to surprise her boyfriend in college. They have a long distance relationship. She has her friend recording. She walks in. Boy is on couch with multiple girls, just him and a bunch of girls. There is some question as to, does he have his phone? Did a girl have his phone? And then he hugs her in a lackluster way. And he's like, hey, what are you doing here? Kind of thing. Instead of elated to see her. So that's Couch Boy. And there's a song.
Still Falling for You. Still Falling for You.
Still Falling for You.
Yeah, Ellie Goulding. Oh, man. It's so funny. I cannot conjure up. Yeah. I can't conjure up the songs whenever I need to. But when I hear them, I'm like, ah, and I'm filled with a white hot rage. So yes, TikTok is a song ruiner in a major, major way. And also I hate the Couch Boy trend. I think it's the worst. I think it's one of the worst trends because they're all staged, unlike some other trends where like the horrible, oh no, freeze frame trend.
Oh yes.
That song, God help us. That song I hate. No. That song is still used. No. And they were like freeze framing things. Those were like pre-existing videos that people like added the song to. This is just all staged stupid videos, and I hate every single one of them. Every last one.
Yeah. Welcome to Popcorn for Breakfast. We're breaking down TikTok.
No, we need to talk about all the TikTok. Here's how you know that a TikTok song has gone too far. It's when people start using it in the background of their video that's not related to the trend or not related at all. Like
Yes.
that "Oh No" song that you were just singing, they'll put it behind people put it behind TikTok still that like are just people showing you how to do something. And it's
Yeah,
like,
they're
what?
dancing to the Applebee's song, but playing the "Oh No" song is what's going on there.
Yeah, it's hellacious. But
Mhm.
anyway, that being said, I still love TikTok, and I'm not afraid to say that as a grown man.
Yeah.
I love it. I willingly dive headlong into that bottomless chasm on a nightly basis. And
right.
last night, this is topical because last night at 12:30 a.m. I was on TikTok. My wife was on TikTok, and in a fit of rage and hatred for myself, I leaned over to my wife and I said, "TikTok is a disease. I hate it. I can't stop." And I just kept watching it. I said that out loud to get it off my chest.
Yes.
And then I was like, nah, I still love it. It's still great.
Yes. And TikTok did not go down in the great Facebook shutdown yesterday.
That's true.
And
You know,
that's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful.
yeah, I mean, Twitter supremacy is what I believe in.
Yes.
I believe in Twitter supremacy. It's my favorite social network. I love it and hate it at the same time because of the power that it has over me. But yeah, the big Facebook thing yesterday, it's so interesting you bring that up because first of all, hopefully we're streaming live on Facebook. I don't know. Maybe their streaming capabilities are screwed. I have no idea. I'm watching the Twitch feed for quality assurance purposes right now, so I have no idea what's happening on Facebook, but it's okay. And anyway, I read an article. Well, when I say I read an article, what I really mean is I read a headline of an article. And so don't do that, Kirk. That's like Inception, or it's like a black hole that you've just opened up by holding up your phone. So that
there's quite the delay. Did you see the phone just popped up?
Yeah, of course. There has to be a delay. That's how things work. It can't be real time. But anyway, before Kirk distracted me, I read a headline to an article that said that during the shenanigans of yesterday, the 6-hour Facebook, WhatsApp shutdown of 2021, that Mark Zuckerberg lost $7 billion. And I was like, I like to pride myself on knowing a little bit about business and finances, and that just cannot be possible. It cannot be. And I know that there's probably some stupid like, oh, the stock price went down by X amount because people were freaking out about the shutdown, and there's the whistleblower thing that's going on with Facebook and all this stuff. But there's no earthly way that man lost $7 billion. You can't do it. You cannot earn $7 billion in 6 hours, nor can you lose it. I refuse to believe that.
Okay.
So
okay. What if it is true? What if should we bet a tattoo?
And I don't want to live on this planet anymore. No. Here's the thing, Kirk. There's nothing they can say that will make me believe that it's true.
Okay.
Because I know that they're just gonna. It's just to get people to click on it, which I did not. See, I just read the headline, so take that. Whoever wrote the article, probably Business Insider. They're clickbait city. Forbes, same thing. So anyway. I'm calling the bluff on that one.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg, if you would like to explain if you did or did not lose $7 billion in 6 hours, there's a chair with your name on it, buddy.
He probably
right
doesn't
over
even
here.
know. He wouldn't even know.
He wouldn't know.
No, that's chump change.
He wouldn't
to that
know.
guy. Anyway, should we talk about movies and TV or something?
I mean, maybe at some point.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I'm ready now that I've got the TikTok rant out of my system, followed by the Facebook $7 billion rant. We're all caught up on current events. And we are reviewing 2 films, as I mentioned. So we have to get cracking because we're reviewing both Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and The Many Saints of Newark. So that's what we're going to get into. And I think we're doing it in that order for those of you on the stream. And for those of you not on the stream, once again, you'll have to wait. Darn. We're going to give you that juicy tease, and then we're going to leave you hanging until Thursday.
That's right.
But all right, let's before we get into all of that, we have tons of movie and TV news. Some pretty interesting stuff going on in that realm, and some stuff that maybe people aren't privy to because it's hot off the presses. But let's get into it, Kirk. Shall we? Shall we pop it up?
Pop it up.
Let's do it. All right. The big one, the big story this week is that Disney and Scarlett Johansson have finally settled their differences with a large financial sum of money,
Yes.
and have made amends. And I think so. According to Deadline, the amount of money is somewhere in the ballpark of $40 million. So cha-ching. Um, and I think you and I were both sort of wondering and speculating on this show what the settlement would look like. Would it be just a financial settlement and then everybody goes their separate ways? Or would it be a financial settlement and Scarlett Johansson continues her professional relationship with Disney in the many ongoing projects they have in flight? And the answer is the latter. ScarJo and her people released a statement that said something to the effect of, we look forward to continuing, or she looks forward to continuing her partnership with Disney in the many years to come. Mm-hmm. And according to the Hollywood Reporter, that Tower of Terror project that she is executive producing and probably starring in is back on the tracks.
Beautiful.
So Kirk, your reaction, is this how you thought it was going to end, or how do you think this looks for Disney? Just overall opinion on this whole deal.
It looks good. Here comes a yawn. Oh my goodness, I'm so tired from all the stress of this case.
I know you've been really losing sleep. You've lost weight. I'm like,
I know.
I saw you on Sunday and I was like, Kirk, you got to get some rest, man. You got to eat. It's going to be okay. ScarJo's going to be okay.
Have an extra slice of this delicious meatloaf that my mom made, your mom. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to hear this. I think this is the best outcome after Disney totally botched this on the front end when she handed them the lawsuit. There's no way that Disney could have canceled her projects because she's such a powerhouse in the film industry without getting big ripple effects. And to think, like, when you think about this, like 10 years from now, and you're going to say, like, dude, Scarlett Johansson almost broke Disney. I mean, she wouldn't like level them, but definitely like take a finger or two off if they hadn't settled appropriately. So I think that's the right deal. Cash in hand. The baby's going to get a really nice crib out of that $40 million and its first car, second car, third car. And I think that I'm more excited for Tower of Terror now because maybe she'll use some of her own money to pay for Kirsten Dunst's reprisal role in it. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, the Kirsten Dunst-san is on as well, so it would only make sense for her to make some sort of appearance in this movie. So that's always good news. But I tend to agree with a lot of what you said there. I think, it sounds dramatic to say that Scarlett Johansson could have delivered some sort of massive death blow to Disney. Not a death blow per se, but something that it damages their reputation. But I think that's very much what was hanging in the balance here. I think that, it was reported that around the industry, lots of different actors and actresses were, I shouldn't even said actresses, lots of different actors were watching this case to see, how's it going to go down? And Emma Stone used this case as leverage to get more money out of her Cruella deal and to strike a deal for Cruella 2. So this was big. This was like a landmark case in a way for the film industry to see how actors will be compensated for films that release in the pandemic era. And I think that ScarJo was in the right initially, in the sense that they were kind of being a little bit shady. Like, I think based on what I know, and obviously I'm not like a contract lawyer, but based on what was reported, it sounds like contractually Disney probably wasn't obligated to pay her anything because they had accounted for that, but they were being a little shady, right?
Yes.
Like they were trying to keep her from getting some money that she was probably entitled to. So yes. I think this is good. Like you said, the PR battle in the front end was a disaster from the Disney side because ScarJo's lawyers quickly took it and said, this is now a character assassination. You're coming after her. All these different special interest groups started coming to support her and said it was, basically a gendered attack. Big yikes. So I definitely think they cost themselves some money, a couple
$7 billion, I heard.
they cost themselves a few million probably additionally that they had to tack on because they gave them some leverage. But when all's said and done, I do think this is the right resolution. I'm glad that their working relationship is repaired because I am a fan of Scarlett Johansson, and I am obviously a fan of what Disney has been doing recently. And I love the Tower of Terror. So I was like, I want to see the Tower of Terror movie one way or the other. So this is good. This is a solid resolution.
Exciting stuff.
Very much so.
Law.
Law, contract law. Very exciting as always. And we're going to get into something even more exciting now.
Oh my gosh, more than
We're going to be
that.
talking about unions and strikes and things of that nature. So if you're not excited yet, just get ready. Here we go.
Oh, this is popcorn for business.
This is the stuff I was talking about that was hot off the presses. But this is going to sound like boring snorefest, but it has massive implications here, okay? The IATSE, which for those of you not privy to that acronym, is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees.
Yes.
Have voted to go on strike. Now, this is a huge organization that basically runs the production, like the production crew and workers of pretty much everything being filmed in the United States of America are in this union. And 90% of them voted, and 98.7% of that 90% voted to approve this strike. So this has overwhelming favorability among those people. They have voted to strike, which effectively gives them the power to immediately shut down pretty much every production that's currently happening in the United States of America, which should be of concern to consumers. And the reason for this strike is that they're basically saying that the work-life balance does not exist in this industry, that they're not paid well enough for how competitive this industry is. They don't get weekends, they're asked to work crazy hours. The COVID situation has not been favorable because they've been asked to go work in unsafe conditions. It's not great. And so they had been working with basically this other acronym, this other group that represents the producers, and they did not strike a deal. So they are going on strike, which means that pretty much whenever they want to, they can shut things down. Mm-hmm. This is all being reported by Variety, by the way. So this means that as soon as, tomorrow, they could be putting a screeching halt to anything that's being filmed with union workers, which is pretty much everything in the United States. So remember the writer's strike, Kirk?
Boy, do I remember. And man, is it still so noticeable throughout TV and film that kept going on. Most notably, the show that I was watching during the writer's strike was Heroes, which,
sure.
show didn't last very long. Probably crippled because of the writer's strike, because it came in season 2 immediately following a fantastic season 1. And just devastating because you have all the creative minds, all the people who are experts at what they do suddenly stop doing what they're doing. But on the bright side, they're going to need some scab workers. I think you and me should fly out there and just put our roll our sleeves up and say, hey, we're here for you. We're ready.
Yeah, let's you and me solve the problem. And go against the union.
We're going to be
whose concerns we know nothing about. I like it, Kirk. It's bold.
Yeah, we're going to be on every single set. We're going to meet every single celebrity. They're going to come on our podcast. You got to look on the bright side here.
We're going to get paid poorly. We'll not be working, we won't have work-life balance, and we may be subjected to COVID, but so be it.
We will lose our homes. We will...
This plan is unraveling, Kirk. I don't like it.
Yes.
But yeah, I think, I selfishly, as a consumer, am like, oh no. Like Spider-Man No Way Home is in post-production right now. What happens there? Like there are other things that are in pre and post and in production right now. What happens? But here's what gives me hope. First of all, I have no idea what the working conditions are in this field, so I can't speak intelligently to it. But if 90% of the union showed up to vote and 98% of those people voted yes on a strike, they are pretty much aligned pretty well. But what I'm also hoping that does is helps them work to a quick resolution, because this isn't one of those things where, like, sometimes you see these long strikes go on and the reason for it is that, like, the union itself is not a united front on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very much not the case on this issue. So if the producers want to grease the wheels, they're going to have to come to the table and make a deal, is what I'm kind of thinking.
Oh,
But
yeah. The producer alliance, they are not sleeping tonight. They are running through every scenario. They are talking with the accountants and budgetary. They are just running ragged. They are the Facebook team, as the Facebook team was working overnight yesterday. That is the producer alliance right now, trying to figure out what is going to solve this problem.
yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know what their... I don't know if wages are being cut or if they're running lean operations or whatever. I would imagine the producers are citing the pandemic as, there's not as much money to go around, et cetera, which is probably just a convenient thing to lean on because they're not hit by the same sort of like supply chain issues that are happening all across the country. They're really just like, they rely on people. So you got to pay your people is basically the lesson here. But We'll see what happens. Obviously, if productions start getting delayed and shut down, we will keep you guys posted. But as a fan of movies and TV, it's something to be aware of because it could start impacting your favorite shows and movies if this thing lingers on. So we'll keep you up to date on that whole situation. All right, moving right along, some interesting projects that are coming down the pike, Kirk, that I want to call some attention to. First of all, just today, it was reported by Entertainment Weekly that Kristen Stewart and Steven Yeun have been cast in what's being described as a high-concept sci-fi romance film. No idea what the plot details are, but since they're calling it high concept, basically in film, that would mean something that's easy to understand the thesis, something that's like, the thesis of the movie is what if this happened? Yeah, so it's going to be something that's straight to the brain. It's meant for the mainstream. And so what it sounds like to me is a mainstream sci-fi romance project starring Kristen Stewart and Steven Yeun. Okay. Kirk, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much does that small bit of information interest you in this project?
Well, first of all, on the first take, I thought you said Kristen Wiig and Steven Yeun, and I was very confused. I was very confused, and that definitely piqued my interest. But I would say, knowing Kristen Stewart's in it, Steven Yeun, probably decent match. I'm going to say I'm 50% invested into this storyline.
I may have also made up the word romance, and maybe it's just a drama. It's 50-50 on that. I don't know for sure, but maybe I made some assumptions there.
This movie does not exist. Cam is just...
No, I think everything... I'm 100% confident in everything but the word romance. I was like, was it romance? Was it drama? I don't quite remember.
Kristen Stewart, Kristen Wiig.
I mean, it's definitely Kristen Stewart. It's definitely Steven Yeun. I'm surprised you're only at 50%. I'm surprised you're only at 50%.
Oh, you think?
I'm higher.
Oh.
I'm higher. I think I'm 7. Just because, first of all, I think, and I'm putting the cart miles ahead of the horse here. I have not seen Spencer, which is the Princess Diana film starring Kristen Stewart.
Yeah.
But the buzz is buzzy, man. It's buzzy as all get out about her. The trailers and the scenes that have come out of that look good. I think she's going to be coming out, on top of the world after that movie. And Steven Yeun, I'm a huge fan. After Minari, obviously after The Walking Dead, I love what he brings to the table. And it's sci-fi. So I'm like, those two in a mainstream movie that's sci-fi, I could definitely get behind. So I don't want to get too excited. So I'm at like a 6, 7 out of 10, I would say, on that.
Okay.
But we will obviously keep a close eye on that project if any more details come out anytime soon. So,
yes.
Next up, this is a real interesting one. Out of the blue, while Ridley Scott was being interviewed, Ridley Scott, man, this guy, he's about to turn 84 years old in November. Okay. He has 12 directing projects in the works. He's executive produced half of everything that has come out in the last 40 years. I'm convinced of it. Like, look at his IMDb page, dude. It's absolutely bananas, this amount of things that his name is on. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And right now, as we speak, he has 2 films that are out and about, House of Gucci and The Last Duel, that are both, you know, about to be released. The Last Duel comes out not this weekend, but next weekend? Soon. Very soon. I can't remember exactly when, actually, off the top of my head now. It's not this weekend because nobody wanted to go up against No Time to Die, but it's soon.
Oh.
And he's working on another movie right now about Napoleon. So ambitious, right? And it stars Jodie Comer again. She was in The Last Duel as well. And Joaquin Phoenix. That movie's called Kit Bag. Well, anyway, he's got all this going on. He's 84 years old. I can't see what's happening. It's crazy. That guy is nuts. And he just throws in during an interview with Empire, like, oh yeah, by the way, Gladiator 2, totally ready to roll. And I'm probably going to start working on it right after I'm done with Kit Bag. So, Gladiator, the 2001 winner for Best Picture, starring Russell Crowe, truly one of the landmark films of our generation since I've been alive, is potentially getting a sequel. And that story has somehow just kind of like skirted under the radar here. Kirk, any thoughts on yay or nay on a Gladiator sequel 20 years after the fact?
Yes. Lots of thoughts. Now, was it determined that it is a sequel or a prequel? Because I know in the past 20 years, it has been tossed around. Like, will it be after? Will it be before?
They're saying sequel. Now that doesn't. It's early, so who knows? But they're saying sequel.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's gonna do a good job, but I just don't see what the story is, who the story is about. Does it take place immediately after, like 15 years later?
Because Russell Crowe has a very different body shape.
Yes.
Now, just because he's an older guy, so like by 20 years, so it's not the same. It's not the same dude, and that would be the same for anyone. And it's not like he was 20 when he filmed Gladiator. You know what I mean? Like, he's a significantly older person these days. I have to say I love Russell Crowe. He's one of those actors I will die on the hill for. I think people like to have hot takes about Russell Crowe because he's taken a lot of different roles, and obviously some of them will be bad. But I think he's incredible, and he's been in a lot of my favorite films actually. So I'm a huge fan. And I love Gladiator. I love it. It's one of the first movies I can remember watching and being like, this is cinema. You know, the Martin Scorsese meme, you know, like this is cinema. That's one of the first movies that really sticks out to me with that. And so I'm very skeptical of this. I'm very skeptical because, like you, I don't see what the plot is in my head. Can't see it. And it feels unnecessary. And like some things have to be sacred in this world.
Yes.
And we have certainly made other things not sacred by sequeling them that are of higher cultural significance than Gladiator. But I'm just saying, like, there's no reason to do this, really. There's really not.
No, it's maybe not that I wish any ill will toward Ridley Scott, but maybe he won't make it. Maybe he will not make it to the. Oh,
Kirk, no. That doesn't sound great. I'm gonna let you try to dig yourself out of it.
Maybe he will just. Maybe he'll go. No, I was gonna say maybe he'll go bankrupt, but then that will give him more motivation to make that film. No, I think maybe he is just going to cash out. I think he's going to get close to it. Maybe some things aren't going to go his way at the beginning of production, and he's going to say, "I'm out. I'm out."
Well done.
And you can interpret that whichever way you want to.
Yeah, I think that was a good recovery, honestly, by you.
Thank you.
So well done. 9 out of 10, I would say. So anyway, Gladiator 2. Who knows? Who knows? But it's apparently happening sometime in the near future. So we'll keep an eye on that. Couple of other quick juicy nuggets. First of all, the Book of Boba Fett. Remember that show that they dropped the teaser for at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian? It's got a poster, which is a great poster. It's got Boba Fett sitting in Jabba's throne, kind of like, kind of lounging like a boss. And with the poster came a release date, which is that the series is premiering on December 29th on Disney Plus. And if my math is correct, Amundo, that would mean that the Hawkeye finale and the premiere of the Book of Boba Fett would be on the same day. So could be a nice little post-Christmas, pre-New Year's gift for all of us to have those two flying back to back.
Could be a crossover. We could see Hawkeye on Tatooine, is what I think you're trying to say.
We finally see Patton Oswalt's Parks and Rec filibuster idea come to life.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Boba Fett's hand shoots out of the sand. He did correctly predict that though. He all those years ago, and he wasn't the only one, obviously, to theorize that Boba Fett was in fact alive. But he did correctly predict that. He didn't correctly predict him wearing the Infinity Gauntlet, but there's still time, Kirk. There is still time for sure.
Patton Oswalt, with no notes, ad-libbed that speech, my friends.
Incredible. That's his legacy to me, and I think he's a great comedian and has done many incredible things that have made me laugh very hard. But as far as I'm concerned, him ad-libbing the Parks and Rec filibuster is the greatest thing that he will ever do in his life. And I think that's an incredible legacy. I should hope that my legacy is half that good because it's so awesome. So Book of Boba Fett, December 29th, that's the season premiere. Again, it'll be a week-to-week thing, so you're just getting one episode that day, presumably, but it's coming. And I don't know what's happening with Mandalorian Season 3, but there are whispers that are getting louder that Gina Carano will be back.
Oh,
not in season 3, but in season 4. I'm not willing to say that that's happening yet because nobody else is saying that it's happening, but there are loud whispers in the Twitter and Reddit spheres that she is making a return. So do with that information what you will. I don't know. Next up, Squid Game.
Heyo.
The latest Netflix sensation is the Korean, I don't know, what would you call this? Psychological thriller, action thriller.
Psychological. Definitely psychological.
It's a South Korean psychological thriller series. It has taken Netflix and the world by storm. Apparently the South Korean government internet situation over there is suing Netflix because it has destroyed their ability to service everyone. It's like eating up their bandwidth because everyone in the country is streaming Squid Game, and it's huge on Netflix. It's like number 1 in the top 10 every day, and it is currently, this is the story, I guess, it's currently on pace to become the most watched Netflix show of all time, which would top Bridgerton, which shockingly, Bridgerton is already the most watched Netflix show ever, even though it's a very young show. But Squid Game is on pace to beat it.
Right. The people who work at Netflix, they are brilliant. They are just brilliant marketers because they have their platform that reaches millions and millions of people. I saw the title for that, and I'm like, what? And I read it, and I saw the crazy staircases that they're marching these prisoners up. And I'm like, well, yeah, I got to press episode 1. Let's go. Let's see what this is about. And you're watching, you're going along. You're like, okay, this is interesting. Okay, awesome. And you get to the end of episode 1 and it's kind of what you expect, but more shocking than what you expect.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what Netflix is best at. I don't know did Netflix produce this whole film or did they just buy it up?
They produced it.
They produced it, right?
They bought the script and they bought the rights to it and they made it with the guy who wrote the script.
Excellent. So, which makes perfect sense because the way they've constructed this is so perfect. They capture you. You get into episode 2 after the craziness of episode 1, and it just paces so perfectly of broken expectations and managed expectations. And if you, I don't want to spoil it because it's so new. Maybe on Spilled Popcorn we'll talk about it a little bit. But Squid Game, fascinating, fascinating.
I think the thing that is most impressive to me about the Squid Game situation right now is that, so let's compare it to Bridgerton, right? Because that's the closest comp for something that has just sort of released and has taken the world by storm recently.
Yeah.
With Bridgerton, you have this built-in equity of the fact that, like, it's Shonda Rhimes, right? She is a brand of her own and brings with her a horde of devoted followers everywhere she goes. So there's that. B, it's a British period piece, which is an automatic markup thanks to things like The Crown, Downton Abbey, etc. That aesthetic has a built-in appeal to it. And you've got tons, it's intentionally a very attractive, sexy show. That's the point. That's the selling point of the show. So it's not hard to see why something like that catches on. Squid Game, on the other hand, is made by a creator unknown to anyone. You know, like he wrote this 10 years ago while living with his grandma, and like it didn't get picked up. He kept at it. And it's in a foreign language, you know, like for America, it's in a foreign language. And it's, you know, it doesn't have that sort of aesthetic or built-in name recognition or anything. And so the growth of Squid Game is purely word of mouth and presumably algorithmically, I suppose. And it's only been out for a couple of weeks. So it's, when you factor all of that in, it's all the more impressive that this is happening. And one last thing on Squid Game before we move on. Watch it in Korean. Do not watch the dub. Kirk, are you watching the dub?
I don't know what I'm watching it in.
Are they speaking English?
I can't remember because I watched the first episode and a half. I do not remember.
Okay.
But it's been about a week. But yes, watch it in its native language and read the subtitles.
Read the subs. Read the subs. All right. I'm not like, do it. We as a civilization, we have to do this. We have to be able to overcome this. All right. We can do it. It's possible. It's not that bad. I put subtitles on everything all the time. It's an okay viewing experience, and listening to the embarrassing, terrible dub while the lips are moving weird is horrible. And yes, I watch Dragon Ball Z dubbed, but that's because I grew up with it that way, and it's animated, so you can't tell that the lips are super weird or anything. Right. So it's a very different experience. So I'm not a hypocrite. I seriously cannot recommend enough that you just listen to it in Korean and put the English subtitles on, please.
That's right.
Rant over. Except for it's not. Please do it. Please. I'm begging you. We have to overcome this as a society. We have to. It's going to open the door for more foreign films to, and we've got this thing going on. I ranted about it earlier, where they keep taking films that are already good, Train to Busan, the most recent example, and remaking them in America without really changing anything except for the fact that it's American actors in English as the spoken language. Like, no, stop that. Nope. Just stop. It's already good enough. Like, I don't want them to remake Parasite. Luckily that movie won Best Picture in its native language. Thank God. That's right. But like, I don't want that to keep happening. So let's just move on, guys. Let's just all link arms and listen to it in Korean and read the subs. All right.
And we don't want to speak to you if you do the opposite. So
that's right. You're dead. You're dead to me. Is basically what I'm trying to say.
How dare you?
And
you disgust me. You're the scum between my toes.
Yes. And to be clear, if you've done it already, it's okay. But from henceforth, you must watch it in Korean. Okay.
We'll be checking. We're going to be popping into your houses and looking at your iPads. And
we're going to be posting about it every day. Like, hey, just a reminder, like, don't watch Squid Game with the English dub. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Pop knock at the door. Don't. Oh no, it's Cam.
They're like, people are muting. They're like fumbling for their remote. Like, yeah. Oh my. Yeah, that's quite a hill to die on. But I will. I'll die on that hill. I really will. Okay, finally, what to watch for this week, what you should be watching on streaming. Pretty light week, but a couple of things to note. The big one, No Time to Die is in theaters this Friday. Finally, James Bond, No Time to Die in theaters this Friday. It's in theaters only. So if you think you're going to stay at home and watch it on HBO Max, no. Also, I guess it would be Prime, if anything. But no, you have to go see it in theaters. So mask up and do it if you're interested in it, or wait for it to come to home video. Either way, we will be talking about it on the podcast next week. I guarantee it. Also, Black Widow is, as of 10/6, so tomorrow, going to be available on Disney Plus with no extra charge. So it's finally exiting the Premier Access window. So if you were waiting to not have to pay the $30, tomorrow's the day. And if you paid for the $30 today, I am so sorry. I'm so sad for you. Next up, What If season 1 finale tomorrow, 10/6, and the episode is officially titled "What If the Watcher Broke His Oath." Okay, so there was a clip shared today of Party Thor fighting a bunch of Ultron bots. If you have been watching What If and not listening to our Spilled Popcorn episodes where we recap, make sure you swing back and do that before the finale, because we have lots of good speculation and analysis ready to go for that. And finally, something I am super stoked for. The Muppets Haunted Mansion drops on Disney Plus this Friday. The Muppets Haunted Mansion, which stars the Muppets, as well as Will Arnett and Taraji P. Henson and many others. So it should be a good time. Mm-hmm. And it'll be available on Disney Plus at no extra charge.
Bravo.
All right. And to wrap up what's poppin' and to act as a juicy tease for our very first movie review of the evening, Venom, Let There Be Carnage earned a whopping $90 million at the domestic box office this weekend, making it the largest opening weekend of any film in the pandemic era, and shockingly, a better opening weekend than the first Venom film, which earned $1 billion in the global box office. So huge numbers this movie is doing. And we are going to talk about it right now. Let's pop it up one last time. Whew. All right, Kirk. The time has come. We're reviewing Venom.
We are.
Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Just mentioned the box office performance. Stellar stuff. Huge performance. And we are going to talk about it right now. I have no idea whose turn it is to synopsis.
I think it's me.
Yes, it is. I synopsed big. So, Kirk, you are up on this one, and then I will synopsis the Many Saints of Newark when we get into that review.
Beautiful. This movie picks up pretty much immediately after we left our anti-hero Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy. He is going through a bit of a transition as his very different lifestyle really takes hold here. And look at that thing. Look at it over there.
Yeah,
look
buddy.
at that guy. It's beautiful. And you see, what we have in Venom is a continued relationship, a growing relationship between the parasitic Venom in connection to Eddie Brock. We get some glimpses at the previous story. We get some cool flashbacks, but ultimately Eddie Brock has to rebuild his life, reshape his life once more with Venom as a part of him. So he decides that he's going to take this story from the serial killer who is just nutso, played by Woody Harrelson, and turns out that Venom is a pretty good detective and solves a very old unsolved murder of Mr. Woody Harrelson's, which allows the state to put Woody Harrelson to death, to approve his execution, but not before Woody Harrelson can bite into Eddie Brock himself, getting his revenge, his final punch, if you will. And we walk through this world of who is Eddie Brock without Venom, who is Venom without Eddie Brock, how they were a perfect pair, or are they? Who controls who? Lots of different fun things, all with the just crazy antics that we have seen in the first film that are off the wall, that catch you by surprise, that make you shake your head and question why you're watching the movie. But then, in some way, shape, or form, it makes you say, I buy this. I buy this and I'll watch it again. That's Venom. Let there be
Let there be
carnage.
carnage. Great synopsis, Kirk. And yeah, we're going to talk about the acting performances, the production. For those of you that are new to our reviews, we're gonna break it down the way we normally do, and then at the end, Kirk, we got to talk about that post credit scene, mid credit scene situation we had going on, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes, we will.
All right,
Let's
so
talk
we
about
will.
it now for anyone who's listening.
No, let's not. Let's not. We will talk about it at the end. By the way, all of our reviews these days are spoiler full. Okay, so if you haven't seen the movie and you're afraid of spoilers, go watch the movie first and then come back and listen to this. But
Yes.
before we get into that juicy post-credits scene, let's talk about the acting performances. And Kirk, I want to know who you're giving your Oscar to.
Oh my goodness. I am reviewing the cast list because this is a tough one. Obviously, we have our heavy hitters, Mr. Tom Hardy and Mr. Woody Harrelson, but there are some incredible performances in this, despite it being what the movie it is. And that's not a dig. That's not a dig, even though it very much so sounds like one. I'm gonna give my Oscar to Woody Harrelson,
Ooh.
who plays Cletus Cassidy, also plays Carnage. He becomes Carnage. I've seen Woody Harrelson in a number of roles. A number of roles. He has been around for much longer than we'd like to admit. I don't really remember his resurgence, but I mean, maybe it was Hunger Games. Maybe it was. Um, uh, who knows? Who knows what it would have been?
Zombieland, I
This could have
think
been
probably.
Zombieland.
Zombieland and Hunger Games were the big ones.
But he is just in everything. He's like Nicolas Cage, but he's not like in his own little island. He's like front and center, playing leading men, and just really destroying it. True detective. Like Woody Harrelson in this film did something very different, because it would be very easy to just phone this performance in. You're the bad guy in a Sony film, not part of the MCU, and he just really went for it. He really did, and I'm so sad to tell everyone that he gets his head bitten off by the end of this film. Um, Maybe we'll see him in some other kind of iteration, because in all superhero movies, no one's really dead. But it was very that just told me how well he did. It was that cathartic that when he dies at the end of this film of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, I was actually a little devastated. I was a little devastated. So Woody Harrelson takes it for me. He had such great nuances. He had such legitimate study for this character. Bravo.
Nice job, Kirk. Nice pick. We'll see if Woody Harrelson gets revisited again in my picks. But for first, I am going with Mr. Tom Hardy. I'm giving my Oscar to Tom Hardy, our leading actor, the voice of both Eddie Brock and Venom. And that's the part I really want to focus on, because I thought that where they clearly focused a lot of their effort on this movie was on the Eddie Brock Venom relationship and dialogue. And I know that Tom Hardy was heavily involved in the writing process this time around. And I have to imagine this is where he spent the lion's share of his time, is building out that relationship. And it was great. The banter between them was fantastic. And his delivery as Venom was noticeably much better, more dynamic this time, great timing. Venom sort of becomes the comedic punch for this whole movie, even more so than he was in the first. And the way that Tom Hardy interacts with Venom and the way that Tom Hardy voices Venom is really well done in this movie. I think it makes the movie, and I think that it's just a real testament to the work that Tom Hardy put in to make sure that this relationship feels genuine, to make sure that his, portrayal as Venom, it would be hard to portray Venom. It's an absurd voice and an absurd character. You have to say all these crazy lines, but if you don't deliver it in the exact right way that Venom would, you run the risk of ruining the character. That really is the backbone of the whole thing. He's the main character in a way. So he did a stellar job. It's clear that he put a ton of work into it, and it way paid off. So Tom Hardy is my Oscar for his portrayal of both Eddie Brock and Venom, but especially Venom, where I thought he was really good.
Beautiful choice.
And a lot of time he sounded like Bane. There were a few times he sounded like Bane, and I was like, oh, there's that voice. But it's his voice, so it is what it is. But the performance was still really good.
Yes.
All right, moving on to Scene Stealer, Kirk. What was the surprise performance for you, or the lesser performance that you want to give some flowers to?
I gotta give my flowers to Tom Hardy. Like you said, he's the main guy, but Woody Harrelson just came in there just like I don't know, like a veteran. I don't think there's much age difference between them. Maybe like 8. I guess that's kind of a lot, but Tom Hardy, you did a fantastic recovery of Venom 1, where I could barely understand Venom's voice at times, so much that the only way I found out what was going on in Venom 1 was by watching subtitles to see what the plot of the movie was cohesively. I thought that relationship was very, very well done, just like you said, Cam. It had to be because of the writing, having his ability to just take on that role and not relying on anything else, but maybe even improvising some stuff where he could say, hold on, let's write this down. I'm going to say this. He's going to say this. We'll record it later. But Tom Hardy, he went into Bane. He went into his native accent, and there were times when he went into the Venom 1 Eddie Brock, which that voice for that American, not great, but his voice when he had it locked in for Eddie Brock was very good. So a little bit messy, but within the rest of the cast, there's no one else who deserves this award right here, as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Tom Hardy, thank you.
Yes, good choice. And Kirk, we've officially flip-flopped because I am going with Woody Harrelson for my Scene Stealer. So Andy Serkis is the director of this film. He's a newer director on the scene, but he has just a crap load of acting credits. Like if you ever want to have a really good fun, just go on Andy Serkis's IMDb page and see all of his acting credits, because the amount of roles that he's done in full mocap would blow your mind. He's played tons of animated characters or fully CG'd characters in, live action movies and things like that. He's very seasoned. And this movie had Andy Serkis's fingerprints all over it. And I think you're probably like, why are you talking about Andy Serkis? I thought you were trying to talk about Woody Harrelson. I'm getting to that. And what I'm getting to is that Woody Harrelson clearly executed the Andy Serkis vision to the fullest extent and with no regard for anything else. No shame. He just went for it. He was zany. He was unhinged. He was exactly what he needed to be to make this movie work. And the whole tone and feel of the movie is slightly off kilter in a very Andy Serkis sort of way. It's funny how much his acting sort of mimics, the types of roles that he does sort of mimics his style as a director. It's clear that that's just sort of woven into him, but he needed his villain, Woody Harrelson, one of the two villains in this movie, to go all out. The movie's called Let There Be Carnage. He's Carnage. He's a big name, big money actor, and he needed him to execute the vision to the fullest extent. And he did. He went crazy. The tone, of his character was wild, funny at times. And he just totally leaned into this role as hard as he possibly could to make it work. And he did. So I was very impressed. I was nervous about this. I was nervous about this role for Woody Harrelson and some of the performance materials. I was like, oh gosh, what is this going to be? Is this going to be embarrassing? Is this going to be good? And I didn't know, but I'm happy to report that I really enjoyed it, honestly.
Yeah, I think it was mostly the wig in the post-credit scene.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, thank
terrible.
God they fixed that, man. Thank goodness. That would have been so bad.
Really rough times, but bravo. You pulled it together, Woody.
That's right. All right, let's move on to Showstopper. What you got?
This one came very easily to me. It's the music. It's the score of this film.
Ooh.
It was really, how do you say it? Boppin'. It was a bop, guys. It was creative. It was its own character, which is what you hope for in a score. And what we saw in this is that there were moments of kind of uh, jumbled, rushed scenes, very, I don't know, not planned out scenes at times. And the music is what strung it all together because it was spot on. It's exactly what it needed to be. I mean, it was as if there was an organist in the theater with us because it was so loud, but not deafening. So I just got to give all the credit to whoever put that score together. I have no idea who did it, but it was really, really wonderful. I would not be surprised if we see some score knowledge for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know. It was that good. It really did a great job for me.
Yeah, it's a great call out. It's Marco Beltrami who did the score for this, who has composed a ton of films and some really good ones, including Snowpiercer, The Wolverine. He did A Quiet Place. He did all of the Fear Street movies. He
Come on.
did Ford versus Ferrari, which had really good music. He's done a ton of different stuff, and it's always solid. I think it's a great call out. So yeah, a composing award. We'll see a nomination. Who knows? But I agree. I think the music was really good. So good call out, Kirk. All right, for my showstopper, I'm going with the character dev. I feel like this movie succeeded where the first one failed, and failed where the first one succeeded. Actually, it was sort of a complete flip flop. This movie certainly follows what is becoming increasingly common in second films within the comic book movie genre, which is, you know, hero becomes angry with superhero life, hero renounces superhero life and powers, hero once again finds out that he needs to be a superhero, and kind of rekindles his love for being a superhero. We even saw it in James Bond. I mean, you see this trope sort of worked out in movies like this these days. Same thing here. Only difference is his powers are a living organism, a symbiotic parasite, for lack of a better term. So that was very much what was going on, but it allowed for some really good character development moments. I thought like I said earlier, the Venom Eddie Brock relationship was the strength and backbone of this entire movie. When the plot was crazy and not making much sense, and the pace of this movie is torrid. I mean, it is fast. It's a tight 90 minutes, and it is like pedal to the metal the whole time. So when things were getting a little wild and unhinged, their relationship really pulled it back together. I thought our villains were well written from a plot perspective and well executed. The like detective that comes into the fold in this movie was well written from a story perspective as well. So I just thought they did a really good job on the character work. And even though I thought the plot of the movie was, at times a little bit wacky, the characters were solid throughout, and it helped carry the movie. And it was well paced, which helped as well. Like I said, really really fast movie. So that's my showstopper. Alrighty.
Nice.
Moving on, Kirk. Let's talk about not scene stealer. Director shoes. Like I said, Andy Serkis is our director. He hasn't directed very many feature films, and certainly hasn't directed one as high profile as this film. So, Kirk, any notes for Mr. Serkis?
Yes, since I have directed more films than him, I'm happy to report on this. Very, very happy to. There was some, I don't know if this was necessarily the storytelling of the script or his, but we never got a clear guidance into what was going on with him and Michelle Williams, who plays Anne. We get this kind of almost like a divorced couple relationship between him and, I'm gonna slap Dan, as Venom. Dan is Anne's fiance. I'm gonna, tell her I'm happy for you, but I really hope that it doesn't work out. That relationship should be pretty tight. It should be pretty clear. and it was not for me. So their relationship, I need Eddie and Anne to be a little bit stronger for the stakes to be that much higher. We see her run around and save him. You know, there's part of it there. That part comes from the script, but from the direction side, I don't think that I got enough of lingering glances like I do to Cameron often, and we didn't get really any scenes together by themselves other than the rescue scene and the scene at the very beginning when they're in the restaurant, which is a very silly scene, which I did not enjoy. I feel like the quips between Venom and Eddie Brock went on way too long. I had hoped that that would have been shorter or more concise, but it was very just kind of random for me, very kind of random for me. So those aside, can't wait for you to hear my score.
Yes, yes, I can't wait as well. I agree with you on. I'm not going to call it out in my director shoes. So yeah, I feel like I want to mention that I agree with you on uh, the Michelle Williams situation and Dan and Anne like felt altogether unnecessary and mostly forced for the majority of this film. I would say like they felt like they had to have them in there almost and just didn't know how or when to incorporate them in a way. So it was a little bit clunky there. But for my director shoes, I'm going with basically the I don't know, the premise in a way, I guess. Like my big problem with this movie and I have a few issues with it, but the biggest problem I have is that it feels really inconsequential and pointless. Like it feels like, why did we even do this? So they introduce a massive villain. If you think about Venom, you think about Carnage as a comic book fan. You just do. They're sort of linked together in that way. And everybody wanted Carnage in the second film. And so let me tell you what this movie feels like to me. And maybe this isn't even a note for Andy Serkis, but maybe a note for Sony Motion Pictures. It feels like they were like, all right, guys, we got to do a sequel to Venom, and we got to do it quickly because the Spider-Man stuff is at high market value right now, and we want to keep churning this out. Now, we don't want to go too crazy because we don't know what the future holds for these characters, but we definitely want to get more Venom content out there because people like it, etc. So let's do a movie that's a tight 90. It's fast, it's loud, it's very superhero-y, and let's get out of there as safely as humanly possible. And that's what this movie feels like to me. And as a result, you get to the end and you're like, what was the point of that? Outside of advancing the plot, outside of advancing the relationship of Venom and Eddie slightly forward. I wouldn't even say that they made huge leaps in that relationship, but they do develop slightly. This movie doesn't really accomplish anything. And, you know, I am presuming they will bring Carnage back, so that's fine. But if we're going based on what happened in this movie, they introduced a huge villain, like the hugest villain that you can introduce in the Venom films, and got rid of him all in the same movie. So it's just like, man, can we not? Like, could we have, if we were going to make it totally like inconsequential film, can we use a different villain? Can we do it a different way, etc.? It just felt a little too safe and not necessary altogether, I would say. So that's where I really struggle with it. All right. With that being said, let's move on to final thoughts and scores. Kirk, you have the floor, my friend.
Final thoughts and scores. This is a fantastic film to see in the theater. I would imagine that it's still fun to watch at home, but you get that music just blaring. Maybe you have a better sound system than me. Maybe you do. Stop bragging. Weird flex. But I gotta impress upon you that there is something so perfect about this movie on the screen, on the big screen, in a crowd of people, because it's very easy to pass on a lot of jokes that get written if you're at home blowing air out of your nose for this type of and style of movie. This is definitely better than the first. I told Cam that walking out of the theater. I said it's better than the first. I stand to that. That stands true several days later. That has not happened with any DC movie since The Dark Knight. So bravo, well done. to Marvel, because it also felt a little like a DC movie, which is weird because it's Sony. It's the same character properties, but Sony is not the MCU. It's not that caliber, and it's very much in Disney's camp for this movie. But the saving grace is that you have some all-star actors in this. Would I watch this again? Yes. Will I watch it more than twice? Probably not. Will I tell people to go see it? Yes. This movie gets a 6.4 out of 10 kernels for me.
Solid score for sure. Um, yeah, all good points. So for me, as far as you always have to compare the sequel to its predecessor. I was higher on the first Venom movie than most people because, like I said earlier, I think this movie fails where the first movie succeeds and succeeds where the first movie fails. Where I feel like the first movie succeeded was creating a good origin story, narrative from start to finish. Where I feel like it didn't succeed was character development. Like I felt like the plot was good and it all made sense and was cohesive and was paced well, but the character development felt clunky. Whereas this one was the opposite of that. So I feel like they're closer in range to me. This is, even amongst the superhero genre, this is not high tier for me. Like you said, this feels like a DC film in terms of quality. A good DC film, I would say, honestly, more so than most that we get these days. But it doesn't feel like the MCU. The MCU tonally is very different. That's not necessarily a bad thing that this movie has a different tone and aesthetic, but also just like the quality of story, acting, production value, everything is just it's not there. It's not at the MCU level. I thought that the pace was really fast, which I was thankful for because I don't think they could have gone much longer with this movie. But even still, there were times where I was looking down at my watch to be like, okay, how far are we? When's this going to be over? Just because I was like, okay, I know where this is going. It's a little predictable. It's a little clunky. I really enjoyed the Eddie Brock and Venom section, but like their bits, but mostly was just give or take on the other stuff. So for me, it's a 5.2 out of 10. I thought it could have been better. I've seen a lot of really positive buzz about it, which frankly I'm somewhat surprised about, especially after the way people treated the first movie. But Kirk, when we look at Venom as a commercial property, I question it because, well, first of all, let's do this. Let's talk about that post-credit scene. Right.
Let's do
so
it.
I guess it's technically a mid-credit scene, but the big reveal and probably honestly, in my opinion, the best part of the movie is that at the end, Venom and Eddie Brock are, taking a vacation because that's what Venom wanted to do. And they need to get off the grid for a little while. And while they are there, there is a multiversal glitch that happens. They end up in the same hotel room in seemingly a different universe. And the J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson report is on the screen showing Tom. I'm getting all my Toms mixed up. Not Tom Hardy, not Tom Hiddleston, Tom Holland.
Mm-hmm.
All H's as well. So that's hard. But showing the Tom Holland Spider-Man on the screen and Venom's like that, he's like, that's who I want to go after.
Mm-hmm.
So huge, crazy theatrical moment. I feel like everybody in the theater's minds were blown by that. Confirms that Venom is crossing over into the MCU somewhat for this Spider-Man movie and will appear in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yes.
So first of all, your reaction to that, and then we'll talk about Venom as a commercial property, like I teased it earlier.
Yeah, from the onset, the relationship between Spider-Man and Disney, Spider-Man, Sony, and the Spider-Man MCU has been tentative. As soon as Civil War came out, Sony's like, never mind, he's ours, we're taking him back, and they were seemingly immediately like greenlighting all of these Spider-Man films. And then, of course, they reached a deal, as Disney always does, and they said, no, we had an agreement, let's keep it, this will benefit both of us down the long run, let's work together, let's shake hands from across the aisle. And Sony has somehow figured that out to the best degree to have Spider-Man's biggest and baddest villain into the MCU. He's an alien. He's an alien parasite. Of course, he should be in the MCU with the direction that they've gone, that they're going into space. Venom could play both sides. He could very easily try to destroy some of the Marvel heroes, or team up with them for a brief period of time, get what he wants, and roll out. Eat one of them, who knows? We'll find out. But the fact that he is crossing over into the MCU is exciting, but it also has a couple of questions as far as production goes.
Yep. Yeah, I think all good points. I think, Sony very wisely realized a long time ago that their properties, their Spider-Man properties, their Spider-Man universe is at its peak value when it is tied into the MCU. Duh. What I think makes them really smart is not realizing that, but forcing Disney to execute that way. That's what makes them really smart, because I'll bet you they came to Disney and said, we need our characters in the MCU, but we're still going to own them and we're still going to get money from it. And at any given time, we can pull them back. And Disney was like, no freaking way we're agreeing to that. What are you, nuts? First of all, it can't work. It can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And Sony's like, oh, yeah? Yeah, it can. We're going to make it work. You're going to make it work, Kevin Feige. That's how I imagine those negotiations going down. They had all the leverage, and kudos to them for playing their hand. I mean, I think they've done, as much as it aggravates me, because I would love to have all the characters in one place, safe and sound. They're doing the right thing. And as you sort of alluded to, Venom ending up in the MCU in some limited capacity or maybe full capacity was always the way that this was going to end. It always had to build towards that. So now the question becomes, is what does that mean, Venom in the MCU? Because the way that I look at it is, for my money, Venom is a great character. And in fact, I've grown to really like the Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock, and Venom overall. But he's a good character that's tied to two maybe slightly above average films, or maybe, depending on who you're talking to, two mediocre films, or one mediocre and one above average film, what have you. But this character does not have the depth of original character solo content that the other MCU characters have. So while, when you think about Venom as a commercial property, I was immediately excited that Venom is joining in the MCU, but I'm also like, those Venom movies don't look like the MCU, and they're not MCU quality, really. So it's kind of a weird feeling, but I do think that overall I'm leaning towards very excited here.
Yeah, I think they definitely have to redesign him when he is placed in the world of the MCU. Kind of like one of our favorite recent movies, Tom and Jerry. They couldn't just draw the Tom and Jerry from their original time, or from their original production value. They had to up the ante, just like Space Jam, right? Space Jam, A New Legacy. They had to redraw them to make them work in the world. So I think that we're going to get a little bit of that with Venom, even though it's such a new property. They can't just tell the VFX team to just go ahead and say, yeah, just copy and paste. Like, that won't work, and it won't look right. But I feel like the excitement, the energy, the movement is all right for Venom. Maybe they'll dust off, the old Spider-Man 2 blueprints and say, here we go. Let's do that again.
Yeah, Topher Grace.
Yes, he pops. He gets overtaken.
Yeah, when they go back to New York, and Tobey Maguire's there, and he's Peter Parker, and he's like, wait, you're not Venom. And then Topher Grace shows up, and he's like, surprise.
Yeah, someone punches Venom so hard that his parasitic blob flies off of Tom Hardy and onto Topher Grace briefly.
I love it. All of these are great options. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. I think you and I are both excited about it. It was an exciting, the visceral reaction right away, or like the gut reaction, was excitement, like lots of excitement. I was very giddy about it. So I think it will be good. I'm trying not to overthink it. The other thing that I'm woke on this right now is that the multiversal glitch that happens in this post-credit scene is very Spider-Verse. Like it we haven't really seen a multiversal glitch per se in the MCU. And so when this happened, it immediately conjured up Spider-Verse vibes in the way that it went down. And so I don't know, man. I'm still hoping for Miles Morales to hop out of Into the Spider-Verse and into No Way Home. I know that that's a stretch and a half, but I'm here for it if it does happen.
I don't think so. I think this will be good. I think it'll happen.
Yeah,
December 17th.
I hope so, man. It's going to be, it's just with each passing day, it gets more and more exciting. More and more exciting.
It does.
All right, let's turn the page on Venom. Let's go to our next movie review, which is a very different vibe here. We're going with a prequel to the hit show, what is regarded as one of the greatest shows of all time, The Sopranos. This Sopranos, I say it interchangeably, I feel like. But the film we're talking about here is The Many Saints of Newark, which this movie released in theaters and on HBO Max, as many films have this year. It did about 5 million last weekend, going up against Venom. The HBO Max release movies, regardless of what they are, have not performed super well in theaters because most people are watching them at home. I mean, Suicide Squad is a great example, a movie that probably would have done major dollars in theaters if it had been a solo theatrical release. Just didn't. And the 5 million on this one, when it's a movie based on a TV show that everyone watched in their homes, like, of course people are going to think to watch it at home. But anyway, that's how it performed. And now we're going to review it. And I am the one synopsing here. So The Many Saints of Newark is a prequel to The Sopranos and shows, the beginning sort of the DeMeo Soprano crime family. Not necessarily the beginning, like you get the sense that the train is already on the tracks at this point, but it goes down during the reign of the legendary Molitani. Is that the right way to pronounce that?
Maltasanti.
Sorry, Maltasanti. That family, whenever he's in control there, his Uncle Jackie. So that's sort of where this takes place. Or Dicky, sorry, Uncle Dicky. I always get their names mixed up. But Uncle Dicky Maltasanti is the one who is in charge here and honestly takes on a way bigger role than I was expecting. I was very much expecting this to be like the Tony Soprano origin story, and in many ways it is, but the main focus, the main driving force here is Dicky Maltasanti. And that's because, if you've watched the show, you know that like Uncle Dicky is sort of the legend behind Tony Soprano. And he, every time they mention his name, I like that this movie's called The Many Saints of Newark because every time they mention his name, it's like they're mentioning this very revered, legendary Mufasa type of character here. And so as soon as you see Dicky Maltasanti show up, you're like, ooh, this is going to be good. And the movie goes all the way up to the end of his life and sort of the start of Tony Soprano taking over or starting his life as a mafioso. So that is the basic premise. There are other things that go on in this movie, particularly with this rival group that's led by a character named Harold. It's basically becomes the Italians versus the African Americans. They texture in some 1960s, 1970s civil rights stuff on top of it to add to the plot, which makes for a super interesting storyline. And then it sort of progresses through the years. We see a really young Tony Soprano and then like a teenage version by the time the movie is over. So very, very interesting.
That's right.
Anything I missed, Kirk? I know I messed up the names and stuff, but anything I missed from my synopsis?
They're all very Italian, very Sicilian names, so I'm sure that we'll continue to mess them up. It was a very, very exciting movie.
Yes. All right, let's get started. Well, I'm gonna start with my Oscar, and my Oscar is going to our leading man who played Dicky Maltasanti, Alessandro Nivola. Who this guy is an interesting case because, first of all, I mean, from a look perspective, is there a better is there a better mob actor that hasn't appeared in a major mafia movie yet? I don't think so. I mean, he looks the part, he sounds the part, he's got the right aura about him, and really just sort of immediately when they say this guy is Dicky Maltesanti, and the weight that name carries, you're like, yep, that's him. Makes sense. Checks out. And it's because he just really brings this performance to life in such a real way. And I think the physical acting, as much as the actual dialogue, is what brings this character to life, because he has to sort of swag around, the way he lights his cigarettes, the way he works on his car, the way that he interacts with people. It, feels like The Sopranos, first of all, and it feels like this is the guy you've been hearing about. And it's such an interesting thing to have this character that you don't really, you know about them, but you've never seen them, and you don't know what they went through and all that stuff. And it's got to be difficult to bring a character like that to life. But Alessandro Nivola does an incredible job. In fact, the only movie I really remember this guy being in is American Hustle. He plays I believe he is like one of the he's like the FBI, or one of the like crime bureaus that they're working with to perform this sting. He's in that.
Yep.
And I think he does an excellent job. He's like Louis C.K.'s boss or something like that in that movie. And he did a great job in that movie, and I remember that performance. It sticks out to me. And so I was glad to see him here. I instantly recognized him from having seen that and was like, oh, this could be really good. And I thought he was great. I really did. I thought he was excellent. So that's who I'm giving my Oscar to, Alessandro Rivola.
You know who I thought?
Nivola.
I always think of him, this actor Alessandro, to be. I always think he is the same actor who played Toad in the X-Men film, which
Really?
is the same actor who played Darth Maul. What's his name?
Oh yeah, what is that guy's name?
Look it up for me.
I
But
will. Yeah.
that's who it is. And for some reason, they look alike to me, and they're both like covered in makeup. So I don't know why, like caked in makeup. So I don't know why Alessandro Nivola looks like this guy, looks like Toad, and looks like um, Darth Maul to me. But he does. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Those are both very prominent roles in recent 20-year history.
Yeah, Ray Park.
Ray Park. Yes, Ray Park. Yes. And I bet if I pulled up a picture, it wouldn't look anything like him with the makeup off. So I'm not going to look. My best actor, my actor goes to also Mr. Alessandro Nivola. This guy is fantastic. There is something weird about me. Maybe it's the Irish in me. I love mafia movies. They fill me with adrenaline and excitement. The justice that is created by the mafia, their own inner justice, their own inner set of rules, their own set of brotherhood, is something I would absolutely never want to be a part of, but it is so fascinating to see. It's fascinating to watch. It's exciting to watch. And it would be absolutely terrifying if you were living that life. And if you live that life right now, maybe we could throw like a ticker down below of a hotline to call, 1-800 get me out of the mafia alive. And I promise we're not like a fake mafia trying to attack you. Or are we? Alessandro Nivola completely encaptures such a prominent role, like Cam said, is that we follow Christopher Malsanti for, 6 seasons in The Sopranos.
Yep.
He wants to be a film writer, then he wants to be a soldier, then he wants to be a boss, then he wants to be a drug addict, then he wants to get out, and ultimately his demise comes at the hands of his uncle Tony Soprano. Just suffocates him in that truck, in the bitter cold. So it's very important that this role gets exactly what it needs, because he is spoken about as a legend throughout the entire original Sopranos series. I'm with Cam. I also did not expect him to be front and center when we have Michael Gandolfini playing his father's role, but it didn't matter, because that aspect of it was so exquisitely and carefully done that I'm excited to see where he goes from here. I'm excited to see what roles he gets to take on because of this. Like Cam said, he's got a long list of work, over 55 films, including one of my favorites, the Red Sea Diving Resort. He's in this film. Chris Evans is in this film. It's a Netflix film. It's based on a true story. It's really awesome. Also high adrenaline. Go watch it. The Red Sea Diving Resort. And I just am super excited to see him be able to have the opportunity to develop such a fully rounded character. And bring it to life exactly as anyone would have wanted it to. Not even in a predictable way. One could say you could very easily make this a caricature, and he didn't. It was really, really carefully plotted out. So bravo.
Yeah, which this seems like a good time before we go into Scene Stealer to call out that the casting in this movie was awesome. Like, I found myself at every turn just loving the casting, loving the way people were taking on these roles. I thought the ensemble was, it's not going to be my showstopper because I'm talking about it now, but I loved the ensemble cast, and they threw in so many of my like low key faves that don't always get as much love. Like Corey Stoll as Junior Soprano. I thought, first of all, looked the part. Also, that guy can absolutely bring it as an actor and did a great job. John Bernthal as Johnny Soprano, Vera Farmiga as Livia Soprano, just like incredible. When Ray Liotta is an afterthought in a mafia movie, like they've done a great job with casting. Leslie Odom, incredible job. And actually, Leslie Odom Jr. is who I'm giving my scene stealer to. So Leslie Odom Jr. as Harold McBrayer, who is sort of this guy. He has a really interesting character arc because he has this. I love the way that they crafted this because they do what feels like a very traditional like villain origin story here. But what's hilarious is like giving birth to a villain in a mafia film is such a hilarious thing to try to do because like all these guys are super bad, but they pull it off in such a really thoughtful and great way here. You can see the fire in Leslie Odom Jr.'s eyes throughout this movie that he feels like he's not getting what he is entitled to, and he's just going to take it. And that remains the entire movie. He starts off being sort of a runner for Dickie Moltisanti and the crime family. And at some point along the line, amongst the civil unrest that's going on in the African-American community, you see this really beautiful story arc blossom where, without really saying it, you clearly see him reach a point where he's like, no, I'm taking what's mine. I'm not working for anybody. I'm working for me. And if I have to get my hands dirty, I'm going to get my hands dirty for myself and not for somebody else. I'm just going to do this. And I just am increasingly so impressed with Leslie Odom Jr. and what he's been able to do. Keep in mind, this guy was not an actor before Hamilton. Like, he did some stuff, but he was primarily a singer. And in fact, I always think about this now when Leslie Odom Jr. gets cast in a role. I went and saw him perform at the Opera House here, or the Symphony Hall here in St. Louis during Christmas one year, and he gave an amazing show. And this was coming fresh off of Hamilton, and right after, so he had just finished his Broadway run on Hamilton, and he had just been cast in the Agatha Christie film, the Murder on the Orient Express. Mm-hmm. And he sort of said that, after Hamilton and after the Tony Awards and all that stuff, he was getting approached by a lot of guys with cigars being like, what do you want to do, kid? You could do whatever you want. And he was like, well, I view myself as a singer. This guy is a singer, but he's an actor. Like he can act. And I'm so glad that he's continuing to pursue it, because at first I was like, yeah, I want you to be a singer. You have just such a beautiful voice, like a lifetime, like once in a lifetime caliber voice this guy has. But man, his acting prowess is insane. I feel like he's developing so rapidly and is able to take this stuff on and do such an incredible job. I never cease to be amazed by Leslie Odom Jr. And I thought that he turned in another great performance and a great character study with this Harold character. It was really stellar. So Leslie Odom Jr. gets my scene stealer.
Well, we've come to the point where We have the exact same taste in this movie, Cam.
I thought for sure you were going to go with Michael Gandolfini, for sure.
Oh boy, did I want to. But man, Leslie Odom, this man, he's not going to stop. He's not going to stop at all because there is a fire in his eyes in this film, and it takes different, I don't know, different heat. You have the red flame, the orange flame, the purple flame. By the end of this movie, it is so purple, so light purple, which is the hottest flame, I do believe, the hottest version of fire. I was a Boy Scout. I think that Leslie Odom really, really gravitated to this role because it was so simple to relate to a character like this. Because Leslie Odom, I'm alluding to Leslie Odom Jr. is a criminal. First of all, he's not. But that he is living in a world just like this right now. The social dynamics of when this takes place in New Jersey and today. I mean, they didn't have to show you but one scene to remind you of what's happening in today's world. And Leslie Odom as a black man, very easy to tap into. But that doesn't mean the role is easier for him to play. Make no mistake about that. Because what he does is there's always this conflict in him because he was part of this team running with this crew, and then there comes a point where he says, I'm not going to stand for this anymore because my pride is at stake, and not in a selfish way because they're all criminals. All of them are criminals in this world, but his pride as a human, his pride as what his direction in life is going to be and who controls it, just like you said, Cam. So I just absolutely was baffled by the nuances of his performance, that he could stare down another character, and be telling you so much with his eyes and so much with his body language. Kind of the benefit of being on stage and especially being in Hamilton for so long. I think that he was able to discover characterization with his body, which is one of my favorite things. And man, did he have such a good stride as this character, Mr. Harold McBrayer, here in The Many Saints of Newark. So same answer, same actor for Scene Stealer, but he was just that good. He deserves all the accolades.
Great pick, Kirk. Mostly because it was the same thing that I picked. So of course I think it's a great pick, and great insight there into the performance. As always, let's move over to the production side. Let's talk about this movie as a film, and get away from the acting performances a little bit and talk about the technical side. So we're gonna go with Showstopper first, which is sort of the production thing that stole the show for us. And for me, I'm going with something that they did really well in The Sopranos as a show. I mean, obviously it's sort of the thesis of the show, but they really carried it over into this one, which is showing that the very human mind that lives inside of these evil mafia people, and showing sort of the way that they can get manipulated into doing this. So like the way, specifically with Dickie Maltasanti, you're seeing the same sort of things that Tony Soprano went through in the show, where he's talking to Dr. Melfi, and we're seeing him talk about these things that he's experiencing. And you're like, we sort of, as Dr. Melfi, in a way, she's the surrogate for us in that show. We're sitting there going, oh, this guy is actually a human being. He has a messed up code of ethics that stands for something. And in here, they do that same thing very well, but in a different way with Dickie. They do it in more of an unspoken way, and you start to see, again, you get taken on that path of like, why does the mafia work? How does it stick around? And it's like, well, it makes the insecure feel secure. It makes the fearful feel safe. And Dickie really embodied that really well. I thought the scenes where he was going to visit Ray Liotta, who's his uncle in prison, were a great way of, he was talking about, I think he even Ray Liotta mentions at some point, how's your merit badges going? Because he's trying to, cleanse himself or balance the scales between the evil that he's doing and the good that he's doing so that he can live with himself. And you also see it in Tony Soprano in this movie, how, he's terrified of his mother. They talk about how his his one of his best memories is his mom just laying in bed and reading him a book. Like he wants the belonging that the mafia can provide. So I feel like Kirk, like I know that you love these mafia movies, and I think that that's the big reason behind it. Is like that is a compelling story. Like why do bad people do bad things and potentially have good intentions? And this is such a another great narrative exploration of that whole thing. And it's been done a ton of times, but this was a little bit different. And I liked the way that they went about it, and it kept me engaged in the characters and engaged in the overall narrative. So I think that diving into that again, even though it was done in The Sopranos, it's been done in a bunch of mob movies. This was a new take on it, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my showstopper.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm going to go my showstopper, the device of using Ray Liotta as both Dickie Moltisanti's father and Dickie Moltisanti's uncle. I thought it was brilliant. Initially, so we see Dickie lose his mind. He totally just snaps his own father in the garage of his home, and then of course he has to cover it up and get rid of it, get rid of the body, and move on with his life. And then we see immediately Dickie goes into jail to visit his uncle to tell him that his twin brother, Dickie's father, that he murdered, is dead. And he's like, yeah, I know. And he immediately kind of accuses him of doing it because he pretty much knows that it was him based on knowing his twin brother. So we get this sometimes. We get this trope of having the same the same actor play a different version of the same character. Oftentimes they're twin, and it quickly becomes annoying. One of the most recent experiences that we may have in kind of TV is in Dead to Me. We have James Marsden gets killed. He is murdered. Spoiler alert. And then he comes back as his twin brother. I personally, in that series, was not a fan of it because it didn't hold enough weight. I felt like they were just going for a season 2. In this, it makes so much sense because the relationship of uncle to nephew is the baseline story of The Sopranos. It's all about Christopher and Tony. That entire series, it's Christopher and Tony, because Tony's livelihood is based on this fantasy of how strong his relationship was with Dickie, which is Christopher's father. So there's all this entanglement that we have between familial relationships, between father to son and uncle and nephew to uncle. It's so brilliant that they brought in Ray Liotta, who encompasses all of those characters, all those different heads of the family and positions in the family, to then become immediately as the father, to immediately as the uncle, to the nephew of the uncle of Tony Soprano. It's insane. That it should have not worked. It should have not worked. It should have been goofy. It should have been silly. But that device was so powerful in the reflection of characters that we needed to see to bring this film together. I could go on about it for days. It's absolutely, it was absolutely the right choice. Wonderful device. And it really just, made my mouth agape and excited to watch the rest of the film when they revealed that.
Goosebumps, Kirk. I got goosebumps when you were talking about that. I love it. I mean, yes, the whole situation with the uncle nephew relationship in the mafia, in the Sopranos specifically. You have Christopher as the narrator talking about his uncle. You've got Tony learning from his uncle, and even Dickie having to deal with his uncle, and also at the same time having to exercise his demons by basically talking to his dad.
Yes.
It's awesome. It's really well done. So that's a great call. Let's move over to the other side. Our director here is Alan Taylor, who's directed a few things, including Thor: Dark World, Terminator Genesis, bunch of TV shows, episodes, including tons of HBO stuff like Game of Thrones, Boardwalk Empire, The Sopranos. He's directed, not HBO, but still a great show, Mad Men. So he's been around. But let's talk about his work on this one. For me, my director shoes is going for the fact that this movie is really just overly ambitious. I think they tried. I think this would have worked way better as a miniseries, and um, ultimately they crammed it into a 2 hour movie. And I don't think it's for lack of intent. I think they really took a really intentional approach with each scene, and I feel like each scene was very strategically placed within the movie. But I still felt like, because they were trying to cover so much ground between building Harold as a character from the ground up, building Dickie as a character basically from the ground up, adding in some Tony Soprano development to kind of bring us up to the point where we're ready for Soprano season one, and the civil rights situation, the the family dynamics, all of this stuff that was going on. It was just like, whoa, tons. I felt like they were doing it in a way and being as thoughtful as they could be, but it was just too much. It was just frankly too much for this movie to take on. And as a result, I feel like the pacing suffered, because you're like, I found myself going, okay, why are we in this scene right now? And then I'm like, oh, well, they did have to go back and resolve this. So like, I can see the thought process and why they edited it together the way that they did and why they showed us the things that they did. But I was still at the end going like, man, you sort of killed some of the momentum of this movie by cramming all that stuff in there. And if we had just scaled it back slightly to take out a few things, we could have made a richer movie that felt better paced and that didn't, bounce around so much that you were just like, whoa, I can't track. Because it did feel like that at times in the 2 hour movie. And again, I don't really think it's their fault. I think it was directed like a TV show, as it should have been, because they were taking on a lot of different subplots, but it just ultimately was too much. And if they had done a 6 episode miniseries on this, it would have been better. I think the medium failed them here. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, this film, as adapting it from episodic to a standalone film, that's a difficult task to do. We spoke of Downton Abbey earlier, in this live podcast recording, and they obviously have one film out, one film in the making. So they'll have 2 films after about 6 seasons of their very successful run of a show. And that film did not feel episodic. They were able to maneuver in a way that it was still continuing the story of everyone, but it made it in one cohesive um, expression. But this, at times, definitely, I agree with you, Cam. It felt episodic, as The Sopranos was. You have to bridge that gap when you're writing this, which would be very difficult to do, I imagine. But you really have to bring in some counsel to say, hey, what do you think about this? Does it seem like this 10 minutes happens and then this next 10 minutes happens? Or does it have a constant flow, a constant, consistent flow? And that's something that was definitely lacking here. The other part in this, and I don't know whose fault it really comes down to. I don't know if it's the writer's fault. I don't know if it's the marketing team's fault. Some of it does rely on the director, but we have this movie advertised as the Tony Soprano movie. In this particular freeze frame that we have over here, it says a Soprano story, but in the majority of their marketing, it said Tony Soprano story. And it I fully came into this, expecting, 90% of the movie to have Michael Gandolfini, which is, again, James Gandolfini's son, taking on the role of Tony Soprano for him. Of course, James Gandolfini passed away from a heart attack many years ago, and it was such a not like not a cool idea, not even a neat honor, but they weren't even considering Michael for this role. And I believe the creator had lunch or dinner with him, and he decided, oh my goodness, you have to come in and audition. Why didn't I think of you? And it just kind of all worked out, because Michael Gandolfini already has interest in the entertainment world. But the ultimate thing on here is that what I'm trying to get at is that it shouldn't have been marketed that way, or they should have upped Michael Gandolfini's role because he was excellent in it. I think that was a miss. I think it still should have focused on, of course, Uncle Dickie, but not having enough Tony in it really doesn't give us the left punch for their relationship, for their growing relationship and how important they are to each other. It seemed like we had to connect the dots more than we should have been exposed to how they really interacted with each other with more time.
Yeah, I think what we saw here is exactly what you're talking about, which is, something we see all the time, which is a creative person, a director, a writer. They collaborate, they make a film, and then the studio passes that off to their marketing team or their agency that they're working with and says, "Sell this to people."
Yes.
And what's the easy way to sell this movie? Sell it as a Tony Soprano origin story.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't blame them for 1 second for doing that. But it does impact the film when you get in there and Michael Gandolfini doesn't show up until halfway through the movie. And every scene that he's in the movie, you saw some piece of it in the promotional materials, in the trailers, etc. So his role is really quite minor in a way, actually. And this really is the Dicky Maltasanti story. So it's one of those things where it's like you can't blame them for selling it the way that they sold it, but it does impact the end product and the consumer experience ultimately. And we see it all the time. The most notorious example of this, I think, for sure, is Nicholas Winding Refn's film Drive, starring Ryan Gosling. Almost impossible to sell that film to a mass audience. It was an indie film that got a wide release because it was starring, Ryan Gosling, and they marketed it like a car movie, and it is not a car movie at all. And people were ticked. People who saw that movie expecting, the Fast and the Furious. I mean, the movie is called Drive also. Were ticked. They were totally ticked, and you can't really blame them. So it happens all the time. That's just one example that popped to the top of my head, but it's just like, man, you can't blame them. But I'm sure the writers and directors, when they saw the trailer, were like, "Oh Lord, what have they done?"
Yes.
So it's just one of those things. I hate when people say it is what it is, but I say it all the time, and it is what it is. There's nothing they could have done really about this. All told, it kind of had to happen that way. All right, let's move on. Final thoughts and scores on the Mini Saints of Newark. I'll get us kicked off here. I mean, if there's such a thing as giving an A for effort, I mean, this is it. They did. I thought, they were given a mostly impossible task of making this thing work with all the things they were trying to do within a 2-hour movie instead of a mini series, which again I think would have been the preferred medium. They casted it well. It was well acted. It was pretty entertaining. I think the pace hurt. The pace hurt because it was choppy. Not choppy like we're cutting scenes too short, but like the vibe of scenes. Like you would go from one scene into another scene, and it was very much like a TV show where it's like, oh, the vibe of this scene is way different. We're hitting the brakes. And that hurt the effect of the movie. I also think they're just, when I look at like what is the point of this, I like the story that they told, but I don't feel like it's the world's most necessary story. Like the big reveal that we get is that Junior was behind the death of Dicky Maltasanti, which is cool, but it's not like the best payoff you could have possibly had. And if that's like the only real piece of plot that you get from this, I don't think it's that satisfying of a payoff. And I felt like, they have this really cool idea for a narrator tool of, Christopher Maltasanti from beyond the grave, as this like omniscient narrator. And they didn't use it enough, man. I wanted to hear his insight. Now knowing, spoiler alert on The Sopranos, like we already have done, now knowing that his uncle murdered him, or helped him along to death by plugging his nostrils. It's like, I wanted more. There. He mentioned that his uncle killed him at the very beginning, and he pops in here and there, but it just isn't much. So again, I just think this movie was a little bit too big for its britches. They did what they could with what they had, and it's still decently entertaining. I'm glad I watched it. But but it's about what I expected it to be, which is a step below a really, really good film. So for me, it's a 6.6 out of 10 for the Many Saints of Newark.
Look at that gun. Look at that gun in the R. Just like Sopranos.
Also, when they build into the theme song at the very end, that was Goosebump City. That was woke up this morning. I was like, yes, injected into my veins. The way that they just built it up with the bass line and the kick drum coming in, I was like, yes, this is cinema.
This film, I think, will get a lot better if it is the baseline of at least a 2-part series. At the end of this film, you have Leslie Odom Jr. just strutting down some stairs. He is obviously building his empire, and he is out to make his own, moving into seemingly an all-white neighborhood, just like flashing his cash to the movers and saying, welcome, neighbor, how's it going? So it would be pretty shocking if we didn't get another go at this, because now we have an opportunity to see really the Tony Soprano story in Newark, because we really didn't get that. Just like the fantasy, the legendary Dickie stories that we get in The Sopranos. We always talks about, let me take you to Newark. Let me show you where I worked. Let me show you what I did. Let me show you the place I first killed my guy, whatever. They have so much opportunity to do that. And if I don't get an announcement within like a 1 month time, I'm going to be a little upset that there's not either a sequel, or maybe more appropriately, a limited series with Michael Gandolfini reprising the role and still in the prequel to The Sopranos, or whatever it might be, whatever it might look like. So I think that if they can do that, then this movie steps it up a notch. And I'm banking on that they will do that, because the chemistry was just too good. I also wished that they didn't make the original characters not so caricature-like. They did the best job with Junior, obviously, because of the final moment with him, the final beat. But you get Sal, you get Silvio, and they are well played, but they are they're caricatures, unfortunately. So if we get another round of them, it might play better with more time. But we really need to see the human side of them too, because that is why The Sopranos is so successful. All that to say, job well done. Could have been better, but I will watch this over and over again when I'm rounding out my Mafia movies for the 100th time. I'm going to give this a 7.3 out of 10.
Nice. Good score. Good score. Yeah, that's the Many Saints of Newark. And I don't know if you caught that there, but I'm pretty sure Kirk's score is contingent on there being more here. So yes. If we go a year or so without hearing anything, we're going to have to revisit it with you and see if anything changes as a result. But it was fun to revisit. I'm actually rewatching The Sopranos right now as we speak. I'm in season 2. I did that before I started it, sort of before I even knew this movie was coming out, and didn't like rush to finish it. But I watched it at a time in my life where I wasn't as critically minded as I am now, and just sort of watched it as a show. So I'm going back to sort of revisit it, and it's been fun. Yeah. And this movie was a fun way to sort of cap that off, knowing what I know. It's great fan service. I think honestly, it does a good job. The issue with it comes whenever you try to analyze it as a standalone film, which you have to do when you're giving it critique, in my opinion. But it's it's tricky. It's tricky because of what it is. But thank you guys so much for listening. That's our review of the Many Saints of Newark. If you listen to either of these reviews, like you were on the stream, or you listened to both of our episodes this week about Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and the Many Saints of Newark, we would love to hear your thoughts on these movies. I think they're interesting ones to talk about. They're not very cut and dry, and I feel like the buzz that I've seen specifically about Venom in my timeline has been kind of split, and then also as well with the Many Saints of Newark, I've seen some split opinions there. So I would love to get people's takes and to hear more. The best way to do that is to reach out to us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're on TikTok. We're on Discord. You can join our Discord server down below. We're trying to build that community up, and then we'll start really rolling there. So please join in the early stages and help us out there, and then we'll build it out even more. But as always,
you a free t-shirt. We'll send you a free t-shirt.
we have t-shirts, we have swag, whatever you need, just hit us up. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, next week will be a little bit of a tricky one. We'll obviously have spilled popcorn for the season finale of What If, and we're going to review No Time to Die at some point. But Kirk and I are actually also going on a vacation with our collective family, my side of the family. So we will be out for the first half of the week next week. So it just remains to be seen what takes shape. And I don't want to commit to anything at this time, but we will keep you guys posted to our whereabouts and what episodes to expect. But for now, thank you again for listening. As always, we have to give a special thanks to our executive producer, Ryan Spriggs, who will also be with us on vacation next week. And maybe we'll put our creative minds together. But also, Rhetoric, the band who created our original music. You're hearing them right now. We will talk to you guys next week.
See ya.